Brought to you by Way Out West FM.
McCarthy School Hour. What's coming up the next hour?
I have an extraordinary guest tonight.
Yes.
Because his name is Darren McErlain.
Yes.
And he was an original student. He went to the school in 1991-92.
Yeah.
He came here on a WOW FM and presented a show in 1991, and he hasn't looked back since. So he's from Mary MacKillop Catholic Primary, but he has the most prolific radio profile. He presents 3 regular shows around Australia, including Perth and Newcastle. He is always on the radio, and he has this incredible media profile. So I don't know how he manages to balance school and this radio, but he's coming as my guest tonight.
You're going to be nervous not making a mistake pressing the buttons?
Well, my wife asked me if I was nervous about the show with such an expert professional.
It's like getting Tiger Woods on and talking about how to putt.
Yes, that's right. Well, it will be a bit like that tonight, but it will be extremely interesting finding out how he manages to balance his career in schools and being such a prolific radio personality.
Good to see another local success story too.
Absolutely.
Very good. Stick around for that. We'll be back next week, and should be a great week of sport coming up as well. Make sure if you do play sport on the weekend, it should be all back into the swing of it.
Yeah.
Give us a call and tell us
how you went.
How
it's
your
like
scores
Phil
went.
Cooper takes the opportunity of doing that every week. So
he does.
Don't miss out and give us a call, 98331444, or check it out on our Facebook page too.
Very good.
The Sports Nest.
Have a good one.
And hello, it's Craig here with the McCarthy Radio Show on WOW FM 100.7. And it's really terrific to be back with you again. It's school holiday time, but I'm really pleased to be here to present the McCarthy Radio Show on this really fine community station. I'll say it again, WOW FM 100.7. As regulars to the show know, I come from McCarthy Catholic College out at Emu Plains, and we have a really fine Catholic high school out there. Those of you who listen to the show regularly will know that we have about 800 students. We go from year 7 through to year 12. That in our senior high school, we have our $10 million trade training centre, and we really do some terrific things out there at the school, both in the mainstream, students going on to HSC, and our ATARs last year were absolutely outstanding. We had a lot of students up in the 90s. And, of course, lots of students went on to a whole range of universities. But, of course, we have the other part, the Trade Training Centre, and our students have lots of traineeships and apprenticeships as well. Lots of exciting things happening at the school, but, of course, we're on school holiday now. And as you know, I bring in a lot of very interesting guests into the McCarthy Radio Show. You know that they come from a whole host of schools, primary and high school. They come from universities, they come from business, from sport, from community organisations, and I've had the local detective inspector on, and we spoke about a lot of youth issues with him as well. Last week, my guest, spectacularly for me, was my son Owen, who is head of HSIE, or Humanities and Professional Development, up at Norwest Christian College, and he and I spoke about politics and democracy and citizenship. And just to hasten that, we didn't talk party politics, but we spoke about a range of really democratic issues and some of our own experiences, but we kept it away from party politics because we just don't do that here at Community Radio. And tonight I am really, really privileged, I must say, because I have a really spectacular guest who is here with me in the studio at the moment. Now, he is a really prolific person because he's a radio personality in his own right. He goes back to the very near the beginning of WOW FM, but presents regularly on a whole host of radio stations, but is also a local teacher at Mary MacKillop Catholic Primary School. And it's my very great pleasure and privilege, Darren, to welcome you to the show tonight. So my guest is Darren McErlain. Darren, it's great to have you back here at the show.
Good evening, Craig. Thank you very much for having me on the show. WOW FM, it's nice to be back after all those years.
Now, you presented here as a 16-year-old in 1991. What sort of show did you have?
91, we did a pre-recorded comedy sketch show, and I guess it was the comedy sketch show that I suppose it got me started. The Radical Radio Racket was basically sketch comedy. It gave me a chance to do a little bit of news, journalism, and also the various impressions that I could do at the time. So I suppose at the time it became very popular and became syndicated across Australia via satellite and things like that too. So it was an honour.
So you did all this as a 16-year-old?
I guess it was a little
syndicated across Australia, no doubt.
Absolutely. And back in those days, 24 years ago, we didn't have the internet. We had to use satellite dish technology through some other stations, and I guess it was a way that we could get our messages out there, perhaps, if sketch comedy has a message, of course.
So, if I asked you to do an impression from those days, could you do one now? Does the memory cells get back that far?
I think I could probably give it a bit of a whirl. I think as far as impressionism is concerned, there are two types of impersonators. There's ones like the Robin Williams that can just go from the top of their head. And there's also the Rowan Atkinson, who sticks to a very strict script. But, I guess one of my famous ones was the former Prime Minister of Australia, but I won't go there. Look, I won't go there right now.
So I should say that Darren doesn't have a speech impediment.
That's right. In radio, you can't have one. That's right.
Well, actually, you say that, but I do. I don't know, well, you wouldn't have realised it yet, but I actually have a slight stammer. Okay. I was born with a really, really bad stammer. And just occasionally, when I'm really tired or at most inconvenient moments, it just comes out, but it doesn't stop me doing anything.
Isn't it amazing that you mentioned that? Because one of the performers in England, Rowan Atkinson, has this very similar type of situation, and he has been magically been able to perform and do so many things with his voices with exactly the same thing. So absolutely.
Well, I was completely unaware of that, and I've watched him a lot, but I just didn't realise that. I find if I make a speech, it's fine. I don't have a difficulty. But the moment I get into a more casual situation, like being here on radio, it comes out every now and again.
The beauty of radio is that you can do so many different things, and you can talk about so many different topics without having to worry about pictures, which is the greatest part about radio.
Well, I wouldn't like anyone seeing me now. I was part of a YouTube film recently out at McCarthy. We participate with the Hotel Management Institute, which is part of the escarpment group of hotels up in the Blue Mountains, which includes the Hydro Majestic. And we made a YouTube of a whole variety of schools, state schools, Catholic schools coming into McCarthy. And I was the local school expert, and I looked terrible. At least I thought I looked terrible, so I'm very happy just being a voice.
Fantastic. All right. And I guess when you're talking about McCarthy and WOW FM, where I was in both places at once, I guess it's the technology. You mentioned YouTube. It's just amazing how things have changed, and how I guess young people can actually have a go at media and have a go.
I'm just astounded by the kids at school, because many of them do have a go and they get involved. But so social media is just everywhere. It's ubiquitous now.
That's right. And to do a radio show before, you needed the advanced technology. Now these days kids have the USB mics, the high definition cameras, and all they need is a green screen, and they've got a studio right in their lounge room, which is quite amazing.
Now, you went on from I'll bring you back to school first, because I'm really interested, because you would have been in the 5th year of McCarthy. What was the school like then?
At that time, it was a senior high school. It only had year 11 and 12. There were about 800 students, and with all of that, I guess it was very much connected to university training. They were inspiring children, the students, to go to university. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on doing the trades and things like that. And now, I guess, 25 years later, there's now a switch with vocational training and things like that too. So it gives, I guess, when you're comparing the older years and the years today, there's probably more opportunity.
I guess the numbers of students staying at school, going on to years 11 and 12, which is what McCarthy was about then, was much, much smaller then in 1991 than it is in 2015, when the vast majority of students stay on to year 12. So I presume those who were with you in 1991, most of them would have been aiming at university.
I think the way that they were selecting the subjects, back then with the Board of Studies, there was board endorsed and board approved, and some of the subjects went towards your HSC. I guess things had changed, and quite often, quite a lot of them were aiming for university training at the end of year 12. And anyone who were going into the trades back then, the market was that you leave with that school certificate and went into your trade and did your training via TAFE.
Do you have some particular memories of the school from your 2 years at McCarthy? Is there anything that really stands out in your mind?
I guess when we were there, I guess we were the fifth year, McCarthy had that very big successful name in football, and we had, I think maybe 2 or 3 years before I got there, there was a person who played rugby league by the name of Brad Fittler, and he was playing for Penrith Panthers and McCarthy at the same time. So successful that I wasn't at the school at the time, but apparently the 10 News chopper had to land in the Oval, do a quick interview, and then get back to the studios to file their report while he was still at school. So I guess it gave the students at the time a little bit of inspiration, and I suppose they all thought that they could do anything, really. They could, if Brad Fittler could do it, anyone else could do it too.
I guess inspirational people are always there, and they come out of the most unexpected places. I would have thought that many of your colleagues at school, your peers, would have seen your success on radio as being inspirational.
It's really interesting to test the market back then, and unfortunately, the way you would share the program, if they didn't tune into that platform of community radio, they wouldn't always hear the show. So these days with YouTube and things on their mobile devices, there are other platforms that they can get a glimpse of some of your work. So one of the things I did do at the start of my WOW FM career is I had a news review program on audio cassette, and every day I would pass that around to some of my friends, and they were quite impressed with that, I suppose. So, yeah, technology has changed the way we share things.
Well, unfortunately at school, students are so used to getting onto YouTube and Facebook that we have had to ban both, because there were too many students getting onto YouTube in school hours when they should have been at work. And we just had to close those avenues down in school hours because the students just have to get on with work, and we have very high expectations for them. Very, very, very tempting for a young teenager to get onto YouTube in class and to pretend to work but not be doing actual schoolwork.
And as a classroom teacher as well, I guess during the day, when I'm working in my classroom and we've got the technology there, some of the students are so keen to get onto YouTube and extract some notes, but it's always good for them to try and get their information from other sources, like books. Look at the contents, look at the index as well. So moving away from YouTube sometimes, that's probably a good thing.
Well, I guess it's important for students to have a mix of sources so that there is a really definite place for YouTube. And indeed for Facebook, but as you say, for libraries, for books. Libraries are such extraordinarily important places, but they've changed too. That the new University of Western Sydney Library is outstanding. The Castle Hill Public Library, I'm told, is a really wonderful place. So libraries have changed.
That's right, and I guess the way that they retrieve information too has changed, and with the e-books and things like that too. They use their Kindles to read a novel at home, and I suppose it's still visual literacy. They're still working through the information, they're researching, they're making some sort of a connection with the text as well. So I suppose it's building them up to be the inquiring adults that hopefully they're destined for.
So, Darren, you are a real educationalist. You're also a real radio personality. How do you manage to balance the two?
I guess I have to admit the radio side started off as a hobby, and I guess I still keep that going as a hobby, and it's something that I distance myself from with the education side. And I guess if I'm finding the time, I guess it has to be at night when school has finished. And even though there's still a lot of preparation to get through, quite often by focusing on the media side as well and the entertainment side and the information side, it gives me a lot of ideas at the same time to, I guess, inject into the classroom the following day too. So I guess sometimes they're connected at the same time when you're trying to work out how am I going to communicate some information, perhaps.
Yes, I can see a real connection between the two. And I know that some students listen to the program, some parents do. And I get some feedback that comes, and that's very, very useful with students. Again, lots of ideas. So I can see how you can, how being on the radio can really assist what you do in the classroom. Your students and the parents of your students must be intrigued with what you do. I presume they all know.
I guess having an online profile, I guess it's out there, and the students talk about it because they visit my website, they see what I do. And I guess I try and distance myself from what I do outside, but they do see the skills that I try and inject into, I guess, their skill base of what they're trying to do. And as a writer, it's probably one of the most important things that they do in the classroom, because it's when we assess them, they have to write about lots of things. We can't assess 30 children at once. So if they've got the writing skills right and they feel inspired and energetic about and confident about what they're putting down on the page, I'm finding that as a teacher, they do a lot better overall in their assessment. So I guess it has a good advantage in that sense.
Yes, I can understand the crossover from all this media work you do into the classroom, and it would be a real boon to the students. But I have to say that you are an author as well. You spoke about writing, and you have a beautiful book in front of you. Would you like to tell us about the book?
I guess, sadly, poetry doesn't always get the credit that is due. Poems are texts. They tell stories. They're descriptive. There's so many things that you can do with poetry. When I first went into writing a poetry book, I really wanted the poems to come alive, I guess, and poetry for performance was one of those focuses. So I didn't write a poem unless it could come to life in some way. So one of the things that I get the children to do is in my classroom is to perform or read out what they have done, so that I guess it encourages them to self-edit. It encourages them to share their work with an immediate audience. And I'm trying to get my students to think outside the square, that what they write is not just for their teacher. It could be for their peers. It could be for their parents. It could be for someone that they don't know. And I guess when you're looking at pieces of writing and performance, an audience that you don't know is sometimes the real purpose of writing. You're trying to get your message out there in some way.
Now it's Craig here with the McCarthy Radio Show on WOW FM 100.7. My guest, who you're just hearing speak now, is Darren McErlain from Mary McKillop Primary School, but also a most extraordinary radio personality. And I'm just asking him about his book. Now, would you like to tell us the name of the book?
It's called Totally Random Poems for Kids, and I wrote it probably 2012, so it's about 3 years old now. But I guess I get a lot of feedback from a lot of casual teachers, mainly, to say that the poetry book is really good for them because they only have their students for a small amount of time. They need to read them a text. They need to experience a very quick text, a text with a quick story, so they can analyze it in some way and I guess do a task from that. So it's been an interesting type of journey. There are some schools in Canada and New Zealand that are using it as as, I guess, a teaching resource. And it's always great to get that feedback.
Which age group is your book aimed for?
I guess it's initially for probably between the tweens and the teens, I guess. So that's, it sounds like a very big range. I'd say for between the ages of 10 and 15, I'd say.
If I asked you to read out a favourite poem in there, could you quickly find one?
I could certainly. I've been reading lots of poems on the radio for a number of years, so I guess I could have a bit of a quick flick through. Did you want me to do one now?
Well, soon.
That sounds good.
What I might do is play some music now, so that we just have a short break, and when we come back, I'll also play some announcements, and then we'll get back into our talk, and then Aaron, I will ask you to read a poem then.
Sounds great. Thank you.
But we'll be back here. So it's Craig with the McCarthy Radio Show on WOW FM 100.7, and Darren and I'll be back very, very soon. It's Craig back here again with the McCarthy Radio Show on WOW FM 100.7, and my guest tonight is Darren McErlain, and we've been having a really interesting talk about his early career time here, or developing career on WOW FM. And as a 16-year-old, he was telling us how he was syndicated across Australia and beyond. Really quite something very, very special for a 16-year-old. And we've also discussed, haven't we, Darren, a few early things about McCarthy when you were there in 91, 92. And you've been telling me about your fantastic book, Totally Random Poems for Kids by Darren McErlain. And I was asking you if there was a poem in here which you would care to read. So
Absolutely,
would you like to do that?
I would like to do that. Okay. This one's called Life of Rhyme. Rhyming poems are a piece of cake. They make the poet sound impressive. But even the most rhyme-obsessed poets cannot rhyme with the word impressive, unless they're obsessive. Poems don't have to rhyme. That's what my teacher said. Think of a special topic and write the thing from your brain. If your page remains blank and you struggle with a thought, just play some relaxing music from the CD you just purchased. Yes. Settle in your chair and type away on your screen, or you will polish your brown table with a can of Mr. Product Spray. Try and stay focused. Listen to nice sounds in the house. To get some inspiration, forget about that squeaky brown animal. It's not a crime, you know, to write a poem that doesn't rhyme. Just write a stanza of phrases. Poets do it quite often. Yes. There is a big trick to writing poems, and you know what is not greater? You need to write and make a mess. You can edit all a little afterwards.
Terrific. I enjoyed listening to the way you read it as well. What sort of reaction do our students have to this?
I've read that poem to, I guess, from K to 6, so from kindergarten all the way up to year 6, and I guess it does get a great reaction. And one of the things that I've asked them is, well, why is that so funny? And of course, when I'm workshopping the idea of poetry, they say things like, well, poems are supposed to rhyme. I thought it was going to rhyme. I thought it was going to say this. I thought it was going to say that. And I said, well, this is great. It just goes to show you that you can perform a piece of writing and it doesn't have to rhyme. If your audience is expecting it to rhyme and it doesn't, you're still extracting their attention. And as a result of performing it, I've been able to secure their attention. So I guess I was trying to show them in so many different ways that poetry has a good way of tapping into some sort of purpose with audience and also what your message might be.
So I guess one part of that important message is to just start, get going.
Absolutely. Look, I even mentioned in the poem to just make a mess, and that's one of the things I do encourage my students to do. I know handwriting is important, but if they feel confident and know that I'm not going to focus on their handwriting, they're quite comfortable to write the first thing that does come into their head. And as long as I'm workshopping and giving them the tools to do editing, then they'll be able to improve.
Well, I can imagine a class having heaps and heaps of fun with that. And I'm sure that's happened. And I can understand other teachers enjoying using your book. Now, I've not had a chance to look all through the book, but I certainly will after tonight, and I know I will enjoy it. I need to ask you, because you've moved on a long, long way from McCarthy now, and you've extended on beyond a WOW FM. I won't say beyond a WOW FM because this radio station's terrific, but you've had a very broad radio experience. So, would you like to pick out some of the highlights of your media profile, please?
About this time last year, I was doing a breakfast program in Newcastle on 2NN Newcastle, and I guess I was doing that from 6 to 9. And with the joys of technology, I was able to teach and also have the program going at the same time. And the joys of radio and the joys of, shall I say, pre-record, I was able to get my show out there and promote the events that were happening in Newcastle. At the moment, I also file TV news reports for WAMN News in Perth and also Hunter TV in Newcastle. And I guess there are a couple of little commercial radio things that I do to, I guess, piece the songs together, looking back to the past as well. So I guess those are the main things that I'm doing at the moment.
But you do many voiceovers too, and you've done one for 2GB.
That was for VoiceBite, and there was a program that they had, I think about 12 months ago, where they needed to promote a product and a new type of app, and I guess I did that for 2GB it was a 30-second thing, but it was lots of fun at the same time.
I can see how from this list of activities of yours, it's really huge. You've done so many things. And you've been a writer too for press, for the Western Weekender, the Penrith Star.
The joys about being to have all these journalism skills is that when there is an event in the school, I guess I can piece it together fairly quickly. And with all the pressing things that journalists go through in this 24-hour news cycle, they can pick up my releases and run them pretty much word for word. And these days with technology, if you've got a camera that's got at least 12 megapixels, they're quite happy to run your photos as well.
Yes, I've found that photos are essential. I don't send out any press releases from McCarthy without a photo. Just have to do that. Now, I can also see from your profile that when you left school, or at least when you left university, you did a Bachelor of Arts Communication, and you began being a trainee journalist with ABC Radio News.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago. Back in 96, I was doing an internship with ABC Radio, and it was just amazing the skills that I learned going out on the news conferences, the press conferences. That gave me the amazing opportunity to mingle with people from the media, from all the networks. Of course, there's lots of standing around waiting for the talent or the people to come out and interview them. So I guess we just talked to each other, and they knew I was new. They knew I was a trainee, and I guess they showed me some of the ropes and explained a couple of things and where you go.
And where did you go on to from there? You went back to university at some point?
I guess I didn't go back into university with teaching until about 2003, and I went and worked for Westpac for about 6 years, and I did some voiceovers for their help desks, and I did a few things for their websites. But I guess I was doing a lot of things that were about information technology and banking, and I made the switch to teaching because I felt that I needed to get back into some sort of creative universe that allowed me to, I guess, share some of my skills as well. So I got out of Westpac and made the transition into teaching.
Well, I'm very, very, very glad that you did and get involved back into at least getting involved in our profession. But you've also kept up this extraordinary radio life. And I also see that you've been, and I should just put a little blurb in here, for Chit Chat Radio at Carroll and Chisholm, our colleague school here in the Penrith area.
That's right. That was an amazing project to be part of. It was facilitated by a very talented teacher, Adam McNamara at Caroline Chisholm College. And I guess I provided a lot of the voiceover station IDs, or the stingers as they call them. And I guess I wrote some media releases, got them some publicity and promoted some of the things there. But it really showed me just how talented some of these Year 12 journalists actually were. And Chit Chat Radio, they created they had their own it's a podcast and things like that too. So it went out live. And if you missed it, you could listen to the podcast later. So they really had the technology there. And what a great way to combine media and education.
Fantastic. And I would imagine many of those students will go on into careers in communication. We have established a link here with the University of Western Sydney again with communication. I've had a terrific guest on here, Dr. Asher, who's been here, who is a lecturer there in communication. And she has another interesting story as well. But one of her students, Bianca, has been in touch, and we're hoping to establish a relationship with her and WOW FM 100.7 as well.
Terrific. And I should also, the University of Western Sydney has some amazing resources, and they have Television Sydney, TVS, on site, and there is an amazing relationship between the communications course and the actual network, and it just gives those students an extra helping hand with getting that show reel together.
Fantastic boost, isn't it?
For sure.
And we're fortunate being in this area with the University of Western Sydney, because it does put so much effort into its community, and we have certainly benefited from that with the Fast Forward program, which we're part of together with the university. But again, just going through this, breakfast announcer with 2NN Newcastle, is that news show that you said you were doing?
I finished up about this time last year, and I guess the contracts with radio are very, very quick. The industry is constantly changing. The year 96 that I finished, the radio industry started to change quite dramatically with a lot of merging of newsrooms and sharing resources, and the need for radio reporters became a little bit less. So I guess I had to find some other avenues to get my work out there and I guess showcase what I can do.
Right, there was a merger recently between 2GB and 2UE radio newsroom, and I presume that means a lot of radio journalists are out of work.
Yes, for sure. In 2003, there was talk that the 2GB and 2UE newsroom might combine, and they were still competitors at that stage. And then I guess 12 months ago, possibly 6 months ago, there was the merger, possibly a takeover, depending on the shareholder stakes there. But and they've decided that they really only need to run one newsroom. And that was very, very disappointing. I had a lot to say on Twitter about that. And I guess they only needed half the journalists, and that became a little bit of a problem. So very sad for those 55 journalists in the 2UE newsroom.
Well, I hope they all go on and find careers elsewhere, possibly overseas, because radio as a communication device is really very well established, and so many Australians listen to radio, and there are so many radio stations, aren't there?
Thanks to TuneIn.com and lots of other facilities and platforms, people have been able to go from 7 radio stations in a market to listen to 100,000.
Brought to you by Way Out West FM.